Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And in 1956 France, a priest is violently murdered, and Sister Irene begins to investigate. She once again comes face to face with a powerful evil. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction for The Nun 2. This video is sponsored by Full Moon Features. If you love horror collectibles, make sure to check out Full Moon's Tiny Terrors. Stick around for more information at the end of the video, or go to the website in the link below. Alrighty, Luke, so we are here. We have seen it, The Nun 2. Now, this was something that if you guys have been paying attention to the channel, we spoke a little bit about just a few days ago when we talked about The Nun. And yeah, we were not big on that film. That was definitely something that, again, to preface, you had seen it when it came out, and then, you know, that was a rewatch for you and a first time for me. And we kind of discussed the whole Conjuring universe as a whole, but there was some positive buzz around The Nun 2. There were some people saying that, you know, they thought it was a little bit more graphic, a little bit more intense, a little bit more well-rounded, or kind of the things that I have heard. And yeah, we got to check it out tonight. So Luke, how'd you feel about The Nun 2?
Well, you know, and I think maybe those people could have been correct in saying, you know, maybe a little more well-rounded than the initial Nun was. But the Nun set such a low bar that I think even if you heighten that just a little bit, it still doesn't come to more than a mediocre film. And I think that's really what The Nun 2 is here. Sitting in the theater, I started having flashbacks of in the theater watching the original Nun, of just being bored. And this was a longer runtime than the original Nun. And I definitely felt it. There were a few, especially as we near toward the end, I kept thinking, okay, now we're going somewhere different. We're extending the story a little bit. And I'm like, I'm ready for the credits to roll. You know, I think this is a film that it seemed a little bogged down as well, just like The Nun was. And would have benefited if I don't like to shave off 20 minutes. It should have been an hour 30. It didn't do too much for the original Nun, but I don't know. I don't know if it would have done much here, but I definitely felt the runtime.
Yeah, I unfortunately have to agree with you on that front. This was, again, just not for me. I was also, I guess I second your point there of just feeling very bored. I in my raw reaction short little thing that we do when we get out of the theater, I called this the equivalent of cinematic NyQuil at a certain extent, just because it just feels like this movie meanders so much. It just feels like so many things are happening that we don't need to see, that don't progress the story. They're not really pushing anything forward as far as our character development goes. I mean, Sister Irene is kind of looked at as almost this legendary, demon slayer at this point, is where they set her up. But I feel like she doesn't do anything the whole movie until the very end. And then at the very end, it's kind of just like, oh, okay. Yeah, that was a lot like the first film. And yeah, this just felt very much like it just followed the same path and the same footsteps. And I think that overall, it just goes to show that this character of the Nun really should have lived and died in Conjuring 2. Like, I think that that's where it left off, because when you have to always be working your way towards that conclusion, there really isn't much you can do with this character.
Yeah, and I think The Nun here is really an exercise, I think, in film to show that not every character that appears in a film needs that lengthening of a backstory, where it's like, I think Valiks being confined into the Conjuring 2 would have been a way scarier character than now we have it elongated, and now we're in the Nun. We're in the Nun 2 territory. Who knows if there's going to be even more expansion upon that character, which, again, as you mentioned, we have Sister Irene returning. We have Maurice returning. And I don't know if that was the right route to go. I think more so, this should have been a completely different story. I know from my perspective, and I probably from a lot of people with the way the Nun was received, they were not clamoring for an expansion on these characters that we had seen initially. So, and honestly, looking at the Nun versus the Nun 2, there are some differences, but there are a lot of parallels. It almost seems like they took a blueprint from the original Nun and applied it to the Nun 2, and then kind of shuffled some things around to make sure we weren't copying the same homework. But overall, it really just felt very similar to what I had seen in the Nun. They didn't really take any chances, and that was another thing with me, where Kayla Cooper was tied into the screenplay. I was very excited to see if there was going to be any of that original flavor that we see in a lot of her scripts. I know she wasn't the only voice that was attached to the Nun 2, so I'm curious to see if there were some rewrites or some kind of some tones messed with to fit more so into the Conjuring universe as well. Because again, this felt like it's in the Conjuring universe and not in a good way.
Yeah, and this feels nothing like her writing in a lot of aspects. I feel like she does have a very fresh voice, and you can see that throughout her work with Megan and Malignant. And it's one of those things where I just really genuinely felt like this was just your standard stereotypical Conjuring spin-off film. And we said a lot about those in our first Nun review and just how we felt about the series as a whole, but yeah, this just felt right in line with those. It really doesn't feel like it's bringing anything new to the table. As far as the scares go, there's a couple of, I guess, fun moments, but they really aren't anything out of the box. There's a cool practical effect towards the third act there that we kept referencing that I thought was pretty neat. But again, they don't do anything with it. It more just runs around the setting that we're in. And, at one point it looks like it's going to do something really cool and very, like, okay, yeah, now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. And it just pulls away. And that was another thing too, kind of going into this. I really wanted there to be more darkness. I wanted the Nun to really take some lives and really establish this horrific the Defiler name that the character is known by. And there's a sequence towards the first act in this, I will say, involving a child that when that happened, I was like, okay, cool. So I guess this is what people were saying. We're going to get a lot of grit. We're going to get a lot of gore. And yeah, that was pretty much it. I got to say, like, I don't think it really, after that, it really slowed down with that. And it really just got back into the paint by numbers Conjuring universe stuff. And yeah, I just literally, I'm not a phone checker. I don't sit there and check my phone very often in movies, especially ones that I enjoy. I'd never look at it. But I got to admit, I was checking that clock pretty consistently towards the third act of this movie. Just like, please just get me out of here. Because I just, these are not for me. These are not the kind of horror that I enjoy. The Conjuring universe has gone from being a very nice throwback with those first two films and then Annabelle Creation to the kind of this, horror, ghost, exorcist kind of stuff, taking all those elements of possession and doing some very a fun throwback that feels good, that feels in line with some of those classics that we like. And they've really just taken it and franchised it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, as they say in Jurassic Park, and they're selling it. And that's all it is. And I'm done with it. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, as we get toward the end of that first act, and they do, there's a particular scene in there where it's a tease a little bit, where it's like, I was on board with that too as well, thinking, oh man, they're gonna go full board here and give us something a little bit different than what we had seen in the Nun 2. But like you said, old habits die hard. They really fell back into that tone of the first Nun, and it just started dragging. You said you're not a phone checker. When we're in the theater, especially during a good film, and even a bad film that kind of is still moving along, we don't really talk too much. Maybe 2 or 3 sentences at most
Mm.
when we're in the
Usually
theater.
pointing something out, or if there's a really good moment and I got to nudge Luke or he's got to nudge me and be like, that was good, that was
Yeah.
creative.
And in this one, I mean, we kind of had some chuckles and made some jokes as continuously throughout this
We were
film.
riffing.
Yeah, just because I mean, you had to pass the time somehow. And it was just and I think it was indicative of what our theater looked like. There was hardly anyone in the theater.
I think there were 2 other people and they were way back behind us. So
Yeah.
like we weren't disturbing them or anything, but it was
No.
just like, no. And
And
they were doing that too. They had put their flash on at one point on their phone. So clearly I don't think the movie was doing anything
Yeah.
for them either.
I don't think it was working for anyone. I think this shows that there isn't really any gas left in the Nun tank. I don't even know if we started on a full tank when we had that initial viewing of the first film. I think the Conjuring universe is slowing down. The Nun, Conjuring 3, now the Nun 2. Whatever's next, I'm not excited for it. I think this is something where I mentioned it in our video. I think it's time to bring something new, something fresh to these stories, make them feel different, not all the same that we've been seeing for the past few years here. The Nun 2 for me didn't do it, and again, it falls back into its old habits.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and recommend this movie. I think that if you are interested in this, I mean, if it's, again, as always, if this is something you're looking forward to, you can go see it. And like, that's cool. Like, if you love it, great. I'm glad it resonated with you. But yeah, this has not been a series, a character that I've really gotten attached to. And I don't think that this has done anything to set itself apart in any way. I don't think that this progresses anything. I feel like this is a very stagnant and stale watch. Again, it feels appropriate for where the Conjuring universe is as far as what they've become, but it's like that's not good. That's not a compliment, that it feels in line, because we've been saying that the Conjuring is falling off, and out of like the 6-7 movies or whatever there are, there's 3 of them that we can say are pretty decent. At least I can say 3. You would say probably 2.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not a good ratio. I think that there are going to be people who enjoy this. I think that it's going to really hit that kind of niche. I mean, your wife came with us, and that was one of those things where it's like she had criticisms, but she was still said that the jump scares were effective. And I think that if that's what you're going to this movie for, if you're a casual horror watcher and you just want to go get jump scared and have some creepy imagery, but you're not as entrenched in this stuff as we are, you might like it. It might satisfy that itch for you. But yeah, I mean, if you're a hardcore horror fan, there are way better things to be watching right now on streaming, on Blu-ray. That we've had a lot of good stuff this year. There's still stuff in theaters that I would say check out before this. I would say go watch certain movies again before watching The Nun 2. Yeah, I can't recommend this one.
Yeah, and for me, if you're a fan of the entire Conjuring universe and you've loved every movie that's out there, well, then the Nun 2 is absolutely for you. That's something that you're going to enjoy. My problem with this, and we've talked about it a few times here already, it feels like the Conjuring films in general are on a conveyor belt, and they're just being produced one after the other without any real change. That's why if you've liked the other ones, this is definitely for you. But if you're looking for something new, fresh, and want to be wowed and really, want to watch a horror film that takes a unique take and it goes down a new avenue, this does not work. This is just something that really does feel repurposed, and it's a retread of a lot of things that we've seen. So in my mind, I think the Nun 2 was really spinning its tires from the previous film, because we don't really go anywhere. It's same characters returning. It's much of what we had seen in the original Nun. So yeah, for me, if you're a fan of the Conjuring universe, definitely go out and see it. But if you're looking for something new and fresh, the Nun 2 is not for you.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think as the Conjuring universe as a whole, this it doesn't bode well. I think you're absolutely right that we need a fresh take. We need some gas in the tank. I didn't care for Conjuring 3 all that much, and this is the same director. These movies are just getting longer, and they're just not living up to what this universe started out as, and what it looks like when you have somebody competent and passionate behind the camera. I think that really the biggest thing I can say, and it's no hate to them, I just don't think they're right for this universe. I don't think they need to give Michael Chives every single installment in this franchise. And I think that they need fresh blood. They need good ideas. We thought Akilah Cooper could do it, but you're right. I don't know if that's on her. I think that maybe there were some interesting things behind this, and then you bring somebody in who has made 4 of these movies, 3 of these movies, and it just feels exactly like those movies. And that's not a good formula to me. It's not working, hasn't been working, and it needs to be resurrected in a sense. We need a baptism. We need an exorcism. Let's do it. But guys, that's gonna wrap us up here for the Nun 2. Definitely let us know again if we're way off base on this one. If you absolutely love the Nun 2 and think that we're crazy, feel free to comment down below. Let us know. And other than that, we got a lot of great stuff on the channel right now. We got a lot of good videos going up. We just talked about the Nun 1, which was a lot of fun. Not the movie, but the discussion was good. And we've got a lot of great screeners. We've been seeing a lot of great independent horror flicks. Again, there's a lot of good stuff in theaters too, like Talk to Me. We did have a nice big channel update video kind of going over what's going on in the future of Splattercast here. And of course, if you were checking us out at the beginning of this, you would have seen that we have partnered with Full Moon Features to talk about Tiny Terrors. So there's a link I'm throwing up on screen right now. Go ahead and follow that link, and just let subscribe, check them out. They're going to be posting more information about these little figurines and where you can get them. They're really cool looking, and we got a lot of great content coming up in the coming months to discuss about them and Full Moon Features as a whole. So alrighty guys, that's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janisko.
And remember, stay scared.